Hello, model railroaders. You're probably wondering, Dave, where's the layout? Well, as you can tell by the echo, we're in the garage at the moment because I'm working on something that's a little dusty and I don't want that dust permeating the basement area of the house. And I do apologize for the echo, but with the street noise outside and the AC going that you can hear through the one open window I've got open here in the garage, I don't want everything to be swamped out. So we'll just have to put up with the echo. Now, you're looking at this going, Dave, what have you got there? This doesn't make any sense to us. What are you doing this video about? Well, many years ago, in one of my other hobbies, which is mineral collecting, I was in a rock quarry. And within that quarry, I came across a vug of blue celestite. And here's some of one of the cans that I've got of that, and that's more of the smaller bits. Now this vug, due to the blasting, and here's a more representative bit of the blue celestite here. It's, I can't remember the exact chemical formula of it, but it's more of a crystal that is shaded blue, or around the edges could be more white like quartz. But predominantly it's a blue color like these two examples right here. And there was so much of it, and it wasn't collecting grade quality. And this was waste rock to the quarry, which is why they allowed the mineral collectors in for dog's tooth calcite, some galena, salarite, some different other things that is in the dolomite rock, which is what they were actually quarrying out. Because they weren't making gravel out of it, it was actually for the steel industry. So this is impurities in the rock as far as they were concerned. There was so much of it, I ended up with a very large quantity. And the thought had always been in my head, well, I'm going to make my own ballast. And that's what I'm finally getting around to trying now that the weather's not so miserably hot at the moment, but I'm running out of time before it gets too cold to mess around with it. So I wanted to give it a try and see how far I could get to see if it was actually worthwhile processing all of the rock that I've got. So after doing some figuring, the normal, trying to get out of my own light, the normal size of ballast is around 250 micron to under 500 micron for the fine ballast, which is what you need in N scale. Now, 4 inches in real life is 0.6 millimeters in N scale. 3 inches is right around 0.5 millimeters in N scale. 2 inches is 0.3 millimeters in N scale, and 1 inch is 0.159 millimeters in N scale. Now, in some searching around, prototypical ballast is typically 1.5 inches at the high side and 3/4 inch at the low side. Now, getting down to 3/4 of an inch, you're essentially talking dust. So, of course, that's why the real ballast is about 0.25 millimeters to about 0.5 millimeters in actual size, because our eyes can detect that and we associate that as ballast. So what I've got is a set of different scales, pardon me, sieves, and from 2000 micron 1191 micron, and something that shouldn't have been in there. 841 micron, micrometers, I'm going to call it micron, 500 micron, and the smallest I've got is 297 micron. So what I'm primarily looking at in sieving is grabbing what falls on this particular sieve, because that gives me 297 micron at the low end, and anything that's smaller than 500 micron falls through this sieve. So everything that is small enough to fall through this sieve and big enough to stay on this sieve is prototypical ballast, I will say, that you would buy in your hobby store, like Woodland Scenics fine ballast is typically going to be in this size. So just so that you can see, these grains here are what are falling below one of my other sieves that I got from Lee Valley, and they're more for sifting mulch and things of that nature. So they fall through the lowest of that sieve. It comes in 3 different sieves and one container that the sieves drop into. So that's the stuff that is bigger than 2,000 microns. Now, as you can see, the particles are a lot finer here. So this is between 2,000 microns and 1191 microns, or 2 millimeters and 1.191 millimeters. Now at the very fine end, the stuff that I'm not using as ballast, on the low side, is this. And this is everything that is below 297 microns or smaller than 0.297 millimeters. So this is essentially dust, and even though there is some prototypical sized rocks, I'll call them rocks, gravel that would be used in ballast, it's just too fine for the eye, and we can't pick out that detail. So that's probably why it's a little oversized for N scale, but everything belongs to the eye. So if we go the 1191 to 841 size, I'm not going to open the bag because the ballast just slowly gets smaller. As we go the 841 to 500, so that would be following the top of the 500 scale. That could also probably be used as ballast in a pinch. That it's not too bad, not prototypical, but would fall as well within that size. And the ideal ballast that we're looking for here is this one, the 500 to 297, and I'll get some on my hand so you can see it. And this is pretty equivalent to the Woodland Scenics fine ballast. So you can tell it's got a grain to it, but it is very small. I'm going to try this and see how it looks prototypically. You know, can I visually see the difference at that ballast size? And if I can't, then I will use the larger size. It would probably be more HO scale related as your medium ballast. that they would probably use. But everything is subjective to the eye, so we'll see how it goes. That's the frustrating thing about modeling, is how fine a detail we can see and how we can make our brain think that what we're looking at is relative to the same size as it would be in real life on our diorama. So how I'm crushing the rock, let me just put these sieves back in together so that the biggest sieve is on the tallest, or on the top, and I've just got a bucket to catch. So how I'm doing this is I took a gas cylinder and cut it open with a hacksaw once all the gas had been evacuated. You can do that very carefully, and that's no problem. This actually was an oxygen cylinder, but you could use a propane cylinder or a MAP gas cylinder, as long as you ensure that there is no pressure in it, and I would recommend you just do it by hand with a hacksaw. No problems there. So I just take some of the rock, dump it in, we'll put that on the floor. Now what I have is a piece of 1/2-inch black pipe. I'm going to zoom in on the tag, with a cap which I have already ground to get any casting irregularities out of. And that's a 2 foot long, and we'll just try not to shake the camera too much. Now this blue celestite, because it is a crystalline structure, it fractures very easily. So I'm just going to leave it at that. You get the idea. A lot of handwork and pounding it down. So let me pick this up so I don't kick it. And for the purpose of this video, I've already done some and kind of pre-sieved it through one of the larger sieves so that I know that I've got mostly fine. So there is a lot of fine crystal in here. Now the hard thing or difficult thing about doing it in this style is you end up with a lot of very fine particles rather than breaking it up to the size you want. Now a mini jaw crusher would be ideal because you can set the gap and it won't crush everything to powder, but they're very expensive and that's not something I'm going to buy, and I don't really have access to or the knowledge of welding to fabricate one myself. So we're going to do it the hard way, or at least I'm going to do it the hard way. So what we do is we pour everything into the sieve and give it a shake. So, of that amount is greater than 2 millimeters in size. So we'll set that off. So, next is our just over 1 millimeter in size. So we'll give that a shake. Sorry for the camera jiggle, but there's just no way I can support the camera independently. Okay, so a lot is in the greater than 1 millimeter but smaller than 2 millimeter size once you get all of the powder off. So that has a fair bit there, so our quantities are starting to increase. So now we're down to the 0.8 millimeter. And like I said, just because of the type of rock that I've got, it's either going to be very large or it's going to go to powder. And again, I do apologize for the shaking of the camera. Hopefully it will not come out being too bad. So a lot more in the 800 size range. So let's see what we get at the 500 size range. So this is a little high for prototypical based on the Woodland Scenics fine ballast, which I have sieved to determine that what size it was primarily falling under. So there's the amount that's greater than 500 but smaller than 800 micron, or 0.8 millimeters to 0.5 millimeters. So that's how, so what this is what is in that bag. That's what it is, which visually looks more like ballast that we normally see, though by the prototypical scale it's not. So what we're really looking for is what stays on this sieve. A lot of shaking. A whole lot of shaking going on. I can't remember who was that. Jerry Lee Lewis, I think. A whole lot of shaking going on. Get the little bit of fuzz. So there we are, which is the amount that should fall under the as close to prototypical but still visually independent size. So the blue really isn't blue, because when everything crushes up, if it's got a weak color, it predominantly goes to a gray tone. So that's what we've got to work with as far as size goes. So we'll see what, I'll do a couple test pieces of track up in the, hopefully in the coming week. And we'll determine which is the best size, and I'll actually do a stretch that uses the Woodland Scenics fine ballast as a comparison. I'll do that in between the two, and we can see what gives us the best looking ballast size. And then, as I said, there's a lot of fines that are just too small. However, they can be used as down on the foam as regular dirt, or between the grass, the static grass, as a covering to kind of block out the whatever paint or pure pink foam there may be. And the same with the other grades. I'm going to keep them segregated. I can always pound the greater than 2000 down more, or that down more, or even the 1191 to 841. Now this is something you can't really go through a blender, even a crappy blender, that you don't want to pulverize the rock. But as I mentioned, the rock that I'm doing is more of a crystal, so it actually fractures, and will just keep fracturing down smaller and smaller and smaller depending on how much force is applied. So let me get one of these lids here, and I'll show you what I did crush up, just so that you can see the different sizes. Like these are still well in the large size, and then it slowly fractures down to the mix that we're seeing. But you can tell as it breaks, it stays cubic to rectangular, or little flat style of particles, and that's just the way the celestite is. So I may end up with some real rock from the dolomite base rock, which is more of a limestone. Actually, here's a piece of the base rock limestone. That's actually a bit of calcite on the other side of it. Very fine layer of calcite, but that's the dolomite that this vug was part of. So I will get to pounding and shaking and sifting into the relevant sizes, and all being well, in the next video I'll have a little bit of track set up and on its own little diorama, and ballasted with the 841 to 500 micron, the 500 to 297 micron, and the Woodland Scenics fine ballast. And we'll see how close I'm getting to know whether this is all a lot of wasted energy on my part, or it will pay out, and for a little bit of effort, one saves some money, or and look kind of different, because nobody else will have ballast. Everything will be a purchase ballast, so to speak, instead of using something that the actual modeler has made themselves. So for just that uniqueness aspect, I want to try and see if this works. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Layout-wise, I have not accomplished really much of anything. I've been working on the structure for the passenger car canopy. I have come to find I really don't like the European-made kits. There's a lot of flashing, and the molds aren't exactly true. The platforms I've had to heat up with a heat gun and kind of bend to flatten out, and even then still had to sand them so that they would lay flat. So I'm still in the process of getting the flashing off all the parts, and before I can do any assembly. Now that I've got the base structures down, hopefully I can get onto that. So not a lot of time in the last 6 weeks or so to work on the layout, but I will try and jam some of this ballast out, and while the weather's nice and it's not too frigid here, or too miserably hot and humid. And till the next video, I hope you've been able to work on your layout sometime this summer, and looking forward to the cooler weather to have to deal with less outside items and more inside working on the layout. So till the next video, it's Dave. Bye for now.